Okay, good morning, folks. Welcome to another Friday and another episode of Microsoft Networking Academy. I am Brian Woodworth, and I'm joined today by David Okiyode from Sophos. He is a public cloud security architect and is here today to talk a little bit about his company and hopefully a lot about their security platform, virtual security platform in Azure. Welcome, David, and please take it away.
Hello, thanks very much, Brian. Just to confirm, can everyone hear me clearly? Is the sound very good?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice. Okay, excellent. Thanks very much for that. So, welcome to this presentation. So, what we'll try to do is we'll try to talk about designing and implementing secure, highly available, and cost-effective virtual networks in Microsoft Azure. So, first, I would like to say thanks to Brian and the team for inviting us for this presentation. So, I have with me also on this call one of our respected senior cloud security architects at Sophos, Byron Watson. So Byron will be available if you have any questions that you need answered as we go through the presentation. So just to give you an overview of what I'll try to cover, I'll try to make it a bit demo heavy because I understand that the audience is very technical and I like technical stuff also. So we'll try to go in that direction. Yeah, so I think let's get right into that. So the agenda that I'll try to cover today is we're going to start by talking about the virtual network security best practices in Azure. So let's start with that as a basics first of all. So I'm not sure, not very many people realize, but Microsoft do have amazing documents out there. But what I've also found is that not many people really have read those documents. And I'll try to bring that up again just to point some attention to that. Then I'll talk about some security use cases in Azure when conversations come up around Sophos and what we do. So I'll talk about how we can help you to meet your compliance requirements as you move your applications and your services to the Azure platform. I'll talk about how we can expose hidden threats in terms of giving you that visibility and reporting that native solutions cannot provide you. And I'll talk about something we call synchronized security, which essentially we're going beyond just talking about multi-layered security, which itself is a great principle and thing to follow when you're talking about IT security in general. But what we've done at Sophos, we've taken that to another level, and I'm going to bring that up in the conversation around synchronized security. If we have some time, we talk about enterprise hybrid connectivity, and I'll talk about this solution called Sophos Hybrid Secure. So let's get into that first of all. So before I even cover this, just to give a quick overview of Sophos and who we are as a business. Apologies, I don't have a slide for this because I just thought I'll give that just right at the beginning of this presentation. So Sophos as a company, we're a security company. We're a partner with Microsoft. We're actually Microsoft IP co-sell already for the Azure platform. We work very, very closely with Microsoft engineers, Microsoft architects, and Microsoft salespeople across the world. We focus only on security. We don't get involved in anything else. And we've been in the business for over 30 years in business of security. So many of you may know us from endpoint server protection solution, Sophos Intercept X, that now includes the machine learning solution. But we do way much more than that. Anything that has to do with security, endpoint security, network security, wireless security, and what we're talking about today, public cloud security, we get involved with that. And that's our only focus and that's our expertise. And we don't try to move into something that we're not good at. What we're good at is security and we stay with that. So moving on, I know that many of you have already seen this slide and you're probably already tired of it. Shared responsibility. Anytime you talk about security in Azure, you bring up shared responsibility. Well, apologies and apologies if this annoys anyone having to see this slide again, but I just want to highlight a few things to you when I bring up the slide. And number one thing I want to highlight to you is that your security responsibility varies in Azure depending on the cloud model of the service that you're using. So if you're using a software as a service type service in Azure, your security responsibility varies in terms of what you need to be accountable for. If you're using platform as a service, like the Azure App Service, Azure Storage Account, and things like any other platform as a service that's available in Azure, your security responsibility is different from when you're using infrastructure as a service, like virtual machines and on and on. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is because it's very important for you to know that no matter which cloud model you're using, you are never without any responsibility. Even if you're using software as a service, you still have responsibility. As a matter of fact, 100% of your data classification and accountability, that responsibility is 100% on you, regardless. So you think about you're using a platform like Office 365, for example, your data still needs to be accessed. Your users are going to be accessing that data using certain endpoints. Are those endpoints protected? Of what use is Microsoft security in Office 365 if the endpoints that your users are going to be using to access that data is compromised, right? If I could install a malicious plugin into the browser and just exfiltrate your data directly from there, I don't care how many security Microsoft got in Office 365. And it's very important that we get that whatever model we're using will always have a security responsibility. And that leads me to my number 2 point on the slide, which is any of this area that you see blue. If you do not have a strategy in your organization to fulfill that, what that means is that you're leaving yourself open to threats and attacks. Just be clear about that. There's no two-way to that. If you're using infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, you're not doing anything regarding client and endpoint protection. You're not doing anything regards to application level control, network control. What that means is that you're exposing yourself to threats and attacks, which almost inevitably, with the kind of sophistication that we see in the markets, in the world today, on the internet today, will definitely happen. But just want to get those 2 points across. What I'll really be covering mainly today, because it's a Microsoft Networking Academy, we focus on Microsoft Azure Network Deep Dive. So that's what I'll try to cover today. I'll throw a bit of client and endpoint protection in there because that has something to do with your network security also. So one of the first things I like bringing up is this wonderful document that Microsoft have. It's called the Azure Network Security Best Practices. Let me go leave this presentation now, and I'll just go to on Firefox. And if I type Azure Network Security Best Practices, and you see this document over here. Azure Network Security Best Practices. And this is a document that anyone that has anything to do with networking in Azure needs to read this document. You need to digest this document. You need to be following this document because Microsoft wants you to be successful in your cloud adoption, right? It does Microsoft no good if your cloud adoption fails, because that's not going to encourage other businesses to trust Microsoft to move their services and their applications into the Azure platform. But what Microsoft has also done very well in is they've written this series of documents to help you to be successful. So, for example, when you're deploying anything, when you're doing anything that has to do with Azure Network, there's a list of 9 security best practices that Microsoft says you should be following. And some of this document, from what I understand, actually comes from the way that Microsoft adopts Azure themselves. One of my favorite sessions to listen to whenever I go into Microsoft Ignite are sessions on how Microsoft are using Microsoft Azure. Because again, they developed the platform, so they understand the platform very well. And it's a list of 9 security best practices. I won't go into details of all of this. I just want to highlight 2 to you because I'll be focusing on those today. Best practice number 4, use virtual network appliances. Because a lot of people still have like this thing that when you bring up virtual network appliances, is somebody trying to talk about a solution. No, this is the best practice to follow. Because when you talk about the security world today and the sophistication in terms of threats that we see in the modern world, just using a network security group does not cover you for those types of threats. Network security groups are great. They will stop traffic that should not get to your environment from getting into your environment. But what happens when that traffic gets to your environment? What is it trying to do? Is it trying to take advantage of an exploit? Is it trying to take advantage of a vulnerability and trying to move around your network? Is it something that's trying to exfiltrate data on your network? Well, network security groups can help you with that, right? So that's one of the reasons why Microsoft has taken the pain to highlight here. So for example, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, application control, network-based anomaly detection, web filtering, antivirus, botnet protection. All these are things, as I go into that, which the Sophos solutions can provide to you in Azure, which Microsoft highlights and say, you should be doing this. Then going to best practice number 5, this talks about architecture. How do you deploy the security that Microsoft is now talking about? So Microsoft recommendation again, when it comes to this is you set up a zone or a tier, however you want to call it, a DMZ, a perimeter network, a security zone, a security tier, whatever you call it. You set up this tier. And the idea is very simple. Just paraphrase it here. Set up this zone, put your security checks in that zone. Ensure that no traffic comes in or goes out of your Azure environment when you're using anything that's deployed in an Azure virtual network without going through this security tier. The security tier is that gateway into your Azure infrastructure environment. And that's what everyone should be doing. So I'll stop talking about the best practices now. And what I'll do is I'll go quickly to my whiteboard here. And surprise, I'm using Paint. So if anybody ever remembers when Microsoft tried to get rid of Paint like some years ago, and a bunch of weird people were complaining and making noise. Well, I'm one of those weird people that was complaining and making noise. I'm just so addicted to Paint. So what I'm going to be showing you here is how to use the Sophos solution, Sophos XG firewall in this case, to build a highly available security tier in Azure. And I'll show you some of the reference architecture. Actually, diagrams I'll be showing you were built by Byron. So thanks to Byron for that. So, but what I have here is I have like private subnet here. This could be your VDI environment that you're running in Azure, Citrix in Azure, Microsoft RDS, web server, whatever service or server application that you're running in this private subnet. It could be platform as a service that you've done VNet integration with. That's absolutely fine. You have your Sophos firewall manager, which I'll show you in a minute what that looks like and what it does. And I have a Windows jump host here. So this is the environment that I'll be using for demo now. And what we'll be doing is let's try to follow best practice number 4 and best practice number 5 using the Sophos solution. So number one thing I'll do is I'll move this security tier. I'll move this into my Azure virtual network. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be deploying a highly available Sophos XG solution, which is a firewall solution, into this tier. You can see the architecture that we make use of, right? It's using the Azure Standard Load Balancer, which came out last year and we're very excited about, using that in a sandwich approach. And also, the whole solution is automated. There's nothing like in terms of manual deployment, it's all automated. We even went as far as to automatically configure the route or the route, however you pronounce that, on the Sophos XG firewall once it's deployed. So what I'll do is I'll go over, so that's what I'll be showing you now, and then I'll go over to show you what that looks like. So very simple. I'm not going to make anything complex for you today. Let's just do something very simple. So first thing that I'll do is I'll go to GitHub, which I'll bring up here. Yes, the Sophos IaaS GitHub. You have the Sophos XG Azure active solution. And if I go ahead and just click deploy to Azure, it's going to do single sign-on and sign me into Azure environment. And I'll just talk through very briefly in terms of some of the parameters that you're filling it here. Firstly, it's going to live in the resource group. You specify the name for the virtual machine, the size for the virtual machines, the virtual network. It's flexible because you can decide to deploy this into an existing VNet or into a new VNet, existing subnet or new subnets, new public IP or existing public IP, new storage or existing. So you can go on and on. You want to specify a new network security group or an existing one, and it gives you that flexibility. But one thing I want to really highlight to you are these 3 parameters here. This one, you're not just limited to 2 instances. So when I go back to my whiteboard and I say the bunch of XG firewalls, this is not just 2. If you wanted to, if you require that level of that more firewalls to be able to handle the load, you could have 2, you could have 3, you could have 5, you could have 10. You could have as many as you need to be able to take in that load in terms of that security tier. And also what this means for you is that you can also mix and match, right? You can do, if you know that you have certain workloads that are consistent, you could have, let's say, 2 or 3 XG firewalls that are running consistently. And if you need to add additional XG firewalls to be able to take on a temporary load or a spike, you could add some pay-as-you-go instances to be able to cover that. And then once that goes away, you shut down those down and terminate them and just go back to your consistent state. So just wanted to point that out, that this is not just saying you're limited to 2. You can specify a number of instances here. And then this other part, we're using an Azure automation account, because some of you that have attended Brian's other sessions on Azure deep dive sessions, you probably know that these load balancers are not actually just software load balancers. They're a bunch of distributed nodes that Microsoft adds configurations to. And what that means is, if you look at this document, Microsoft highlights and says the load balancer health probes originate from the same IP address. So it does not matter whether they're internal or external, the health probe originate from the same IP address, and this from Microsoft document. And so what that means is that there are certain router routes that we need to add into the table to be able to cause the health probes to be successful. And we're not going to allow you to do that manually, right? We're talking cloud, we're talking automation, and that's what we're doing in this case. So you go ahead and you specify an automation account, name, existing or new, and we're just going to add like the bunch of template scripts that we need to automate all of that. So I won't go through the pain of filling all of this in. What I'll do is I'll go load the parameter file that I created earlier, and I'll load the file in. I'll specify my resource group. Let's create a new one and specify that name there, and I'll give it a password. And you can see all the parameters that I'm using, and that's what I'm doing. So if I go ahead and just click agree to the terms and condition, and then click on purchase, and then the deployment should start. And essentially what I've just showed to you here is I've just deployed Sophos XG firewalls as a security tier in Azure. So that should kick in a few minutes, and then I'll move to the next slide. So just to highlight that in terms of the way that we're doing this, again, you can look through the templates that we have on GitHub. I highly recommend that. We're using nested templates. So again, we're building multiple things in parallel, as you can see here, building the virtual network, multiple things in parallel, and then at the end of the whole process, we tie everything together. So let's move on into some of the other things. So back to the reference architecture diagram. So this is a reference architecture diagram that Byron, who is currently on the call, drew up, where you can see the Sophos XG firewall high available security tier in Azure. You can use Sophos Manager to do the configuration of this, which I'll show you in a minute. This is just a reference architecture for a single VNet. Here's another one for multiple VNets. So let's say you had multiple VNets, you could do VNet peering, and with the flexibility that you have with VNet peering in Azure, there's a lot of amazing architecture that you could do with this. Just having like that strong security tier, no traffic comes in or goes out without going through that tier. I've already done the demo. I just want to show you like some other thing, just to mention that this is not just limited to like just virtual machines and infrastructure as a service. If you're doing anything that integrates into an Azure VNet, you could use that as your security tier for that. Also to highlight to you that if you're doing anything, let's say with one of the questions that I get is people are using the Azure storage and they want some kind of threats visibility into that, how they can use the Sophos XG to do that. So with the use of something like the service endpoint, you could architect that. Just showing you a reference diagram. I'll give an email at the end that you can reach out to, and we can talk about this in much more details. And this is just an example of how we use that for an Azure Blob Storage security, where you're using a custom name to do like your threat filtering before things are stored in your Azure Blob Storage, to avoid, for example, somebody being able to store malware or any of that in your Azure Blob Storage. So let's move on to the other use cases that I want to talk about. So not this one, let's move on to the next one. So business requirements to meet compliance standard like PCI DSS, ISO 27001 and others. So what this is talking about is with the Sophos XG firewall, one of the main things that we get is businesses that to move into Azure have concerns around how do they meet these standards like PCI DSS, EPA, and others. Because many of these standards have clear requirements that you have a web application firewall, you have IPS, IDS, they still require those technical controls to be in place. Now, when you talk about like the way that many people architect that, you have a separate web application firewall, separate next generation firewall to provide IPS, IDS because they need that to meet their compliance requirements. Well, what we've done, what we have at Sophos is we actually have all of those as a single solution. So we have a web application firewall component built into a next generation firewall. So what that means is that you get the most comprehensive solution, the most consolidated solution that you can get. This does two things for your Azure environment. Number one is it simplifies your architecture. So rather than having to have this complicated architecture of how traffic flows from here and flows into this one, and number two thing that it does is it reduces your cost. So you don't have to go spend extra money to go get this extra compute instances to run that and then extra licenses to run that. You could get the same security tier that does all of this as just a single solution. So that's what we do. And that's something that's quite unique because I don't think I know of anyone else that does this, where you have your IPS, IDS systems and all this other protection included with web application firewall built into that. So that's something that we do. So again, simplify your architecture, reduce your cost. This is another nice diagram by Byron that shows that the level of protection that the web application firewall even does. So it's not just the OWASP stop them that we are doing. There's a lot of security that's built into that, right? Plus, you get IPS, IDS also, right? Meet your compliance requirements. You're doing HIPAA, you're doing IP, PCI-DSS as you middle of that. So there's a lot of security framework that's built into the Sophos XG firewall. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my whiteboard over here, and I'll show you a short demo. So what I have here is I have a web server that's running in this private subnet. What I will try to do is show you like the high availability component of this and some of the security functions of the XG firewall. I'm not going to wait for this to finish deploying, so that's why I've taken the joy of deploying them ahead of time. So, but what I'll do is I'll go to my Sophos Firewall Manager here, and I'll just push out certain configuration to my firewalls to allow traffic to flow securely, both inbound and outbound into my Azure environment. And you see how simple this is to do. It's one of the things we pride ourselves at Sophos, simple security. So what you're seeing on the screen is exactly what I have in this lab environment over here. It's exactly what you have. So I'll go to my backend machine, which is this machine that I have over here. If I open the web browser and if I try to go to www.dns.org, for instance, you can see that I'm not able to connect to dns.org because, again, there's no traffic that's flowing through yet. I'll need to go to Firewall Manager, push out configuration to my tier, my security tier. So let's go do that now. So what I'll do is I'll go to tier, I'll go to my Sophos Firewall Manager and log into that. And what I'll do is I'll go on the templates. And on the template, I can just create a template of a configuration. Straightforward and simple. Go on the firewall. And I had a firewall rule. And I'll say this is my egress security rule. I'll place this rule at the top. I'll select the zone that I'm going from, which is my LAN zone. I'm going to coming from any source network in the LAN zone and going to the WAN zone destination. I'm not going to be doing user identity here, so I'll skip this. So here you begin to see that level of security that we'll provide. So for example, if you wanted to, you could scan HTTP, and you could do that with a single AV engine or a dual AV engine. They're talking about traffic that's going outbound now, and you can see the level of protection that we'll provide. If you wanted to, you could decrypt and scan HTTPS and do the packet inspection. But here is where you begin to see how comprehensive this solution is. You can add your web filtering, right, over here, and I'll show you what those policies look like in a minute. You can add IPS, IDS on top of that if you wanted to. I'll talk about synchronized security at the end. Let me go quickly to show you like the web and the IPS, IDS. So if I go to the web protection, in this sense, web traffic that's going outbound, you have you can control that based on file types. You can control that based on URL groups, or we have automatic categorization that's been done by Sophos Labs that also fits into the system and automatically updated. And then you can build your policy based on that and allow certain sets of your network to be able to access certain URLs or certain categories or certain types of files. Essentially, you have greater control and you can delve really deep. And it's a very, very simple thing to configure. And once you've configured your policy, you can have an IPS policy also, for example. You can even build your own custom IPS signature if you know of a particular signature that's going around. Or I'll show you an example of what one of these look like and some of the signatures that's built into this that you could use. And then again, once you have your policies all configured, you go to hide your rule and then just specify your policy. That's simple, straightforward. So let's do egress security rule again. And I'll go through this very quickly. LAN, and my destination will be anything going from LAN to WAN. No matching identity. I want to scan HTTP. Let's leave HTTPS for now. I'm not going to use IPS IDS, but if I wanted to, I just pick whatever policy that I've configured. If I wanted to do, let's just pick child protection action compliance framework to follow that for web filtering. Actually, you know what? Let's do a default workplace policy. I'll do, and I'll just go ahead and log traffic, save that. I have my egress security rule configured. And I just go to push out this rule to my firewalls. Very, very straightforward. So I go on the summary, provision my templates. I don't need to push out everything because I only made one change. So I'm just going to push out firewall. I'm going to click on confirm. Select the firewalls that I want to push those to. Save that. And if I wanted to, I could monitor the events and it tells me my configuration push is in progress. And once it's completed, I should see success over here. And once I see success over there, what that means is I've configured the security rule that's going to take traffic from my private subnet through the security tier out to the internet doing all the security checks. So we'll just wait a few moments for this to complete. While that is going on, so let's move on to the next slide and I'll come back to check on this when it's finished. So actually, you know what? Let's check that again. Yeah, actually, that's finished now. So that's all good. So let's go back to here. Let's do a load. And here you go. Now I have traffic flowing through my security tier again, going through all those amazing security checks. And I've just pushed that down within seconds. That's how simple the Sophos solution is. One thing we talk about a lot is simplified security. So that's for outbound. What about we do for inbound? Let's go do that. So again, back to this, I do have a web server running on this solution. I'm going to configure inbound protection on this. So again, I go to my Sophos Firewall Manager. I go under my templates. I go under my firewall, and this time around, I'm going to do a business application rule, and I'm going to select a WAF rule. Select the WAF rule, put that in top position. Anything that it's in my WAN interfaces on the XG firewalls, which domain to respond to. So for this one, what I'll need to do is I'll need to go to my public IP address, and I'll need to go get the DNS name. Over here. So I'll get this DNS name. And just to show you how simple and how easy it is to configure. So I have my web server. I specify the web server that I wanted to send traffic to. This could be a pool of web servers if I wanted to. And I select if I wanted to block certain networks from being able to connect to this web server, I could specify that. I could add exceptions if I wanted to say, hey, anything that if I go to add exception, just to show you how easy, again, that is, I could skip certain checks in the OWASP top 10 if I wanted to and say, I don't want to do these checks for this particular server, whatever. I could add exceptions if I need to, that flexibility and that simplicity. Here's where I can specify my protection profile, my web server protection policy, and I'll go show you what that looks like in a minute. But here's where you see that comprehensive solution I'm talking about. You need WAF and you need IPS IDS to meet your PCI DSS and EPA requirements. You got that as a single solution. Let's go quickly on the web server and just show you what the protection policy looks like. So you see again how comprehensive that is. I can specify all this level of protection. I can set it to reject or monitor mode just with a few clicks. I can specify if I want AV scanning, do I want the Sophos AV scanning, or do I want it to be draw scan? Do I want upload or downloads? If you're careful, if you're concerned about people uploading malware to your web server, you can define whatever you want in terms of scan size. You can use a threat protection, a bad reputation protection service by Sophos Lab to block certain IP components that we know are doing malicious things on the internet. And you can also specify your OWASP top 10. This is where you can specify the OWASP top 10 that you want to protect against. If you that particular rule that's causing you too much false positive, very simple to just skip those if you wanted to. So let's go back and let's do that very quickly. So again, I'll call this WAF and I'll call this ingress security rule, and anything that's coming, and puts my domain name again over here. I created a policy earlier called the web server protection policy. I'll select that policy there. If I wanted to, again, IPS IDS, anything that's coming from 1 to DMZ is what I want in this case. I can specify additional options and I can go ahead and click save to that. It's complaining because I'm using port 80, that's fine. So now I have my ingress rule. Just to show you that traffic is not yet flowing through that security tier inbound. So what I'll do is I'll try to go to that location, HTTP, and I'll go there and you see that that's nothing is going through. So what I'll do is I'll go push out this rule also. Provision my templates, single one that I pushed, that I made a change, and then I push that down to my Sophos firewalls, and I click on save to that. And again, if I wanted to, I could monitor to see when the rules are all fully pushed. And when all of that is completed, back to the whiteboard now, I should be able to get traffic. So I already confirmed that traffic is flowing outbound through the security tier. Should be able to get traffic easily flowing inbound through the security tier. And then I'll show you the high availability piece of that and how you can see that that's resilient. So what I'll do is, let's go back to that. Let's see, it's almost done. While it's doing that, what I'll do is I want to do some monitoring so I can do the failover and show you what that looks like. So I'll connect to the firewalls. Oh, still connected to that one. So let's okay, so if I do a TCP dump, actually, let's quickly get the IP address of dns.org. Oh. So we have the IP address of dns.org, and what I'll do is I'll do a TCP dump on that. Posts. And I'll copy this and I'll go do that on my other firewall. So this is firewall 2 over here. And this is firewall 1 over here. Because I'll be using this in a minute. Okay, back to this. Let's see if our configuration push is done. That's done. Let's go back to do a test. And here we go. Yeah, look at that. That's amazing. Firewall working, going to our web application engine and going to the IPS engine of the Sophos XG firewall. And we got the Kung Fu Panda, my two favorite Kung Fu Panda characters, Mr. Ping and Miss Lele. Excellent. So that's that for the inbound and outbound. So let me show you the HA, the highly available piece of this, and how that helps you. Because we mentioned three things. We mentioned secure. So you see the security component and the comprehensiveness of that solution. We mentioned highly available. We mentioned cost effective. You can see that cost effective component in terms of the comprehensiveness of that solution again. Bringing a lot of things that used to be separate and bringing them all together as a single solution. It consolidates, save cost, simplify your architecture. So what I'll do is let's go have a look, and I'll go refresh dns.org just to verify which appliance my solution is, my traffic is going to. So I can see that that's going to firewall 1, that's 10.10.2.4. That's absolutely fine. So what I'll go do is I'll go shut down firewall number 1. And let's go do that from the Azure portal. So firewall number 1 is this one, firewall 0. And I'm going to stop that. So I stop that firewall. And then if I go back to where I'm monitoring them, I should see an error message very soon. Yeah, there you go. Firewall all shuts down now. So, and what should happen is I'll go back to my backend server and I'll do a refresh and see if I'm still I still have access. And what's happened now is that it failed over to the other one and it's using the other one already. And if I go check my inbound security, my inbound web server, let's see if we still got access to that. And yes, we still do. We still have access to that. So that's that component of that. And you see how easy that is. So I'll rush through because I want to just touch on a few more points and then we can run through. I think I'll skip some of the demos. So the other one that I like talking about is around visibility and reporting component that builds into this XG firewall I'm talking about. So, and this is what we do very well in Sophos. So Sophos XG firewall has probably one of the best reporting engines built into it in the business, right? So a lot, again, for some of the others, you see it's like a separate reporting engine that does that. For us, it's all built into that. That's the whole point. It's that it's all built into that. It's not separate. You can see like the visibility that this gives to you, how detailed that is. You can tell exactly what's going on within your environment. You can tell what's using what's doing what within your environment. Actually, one of my favorite stories is an admin that puts the Sophos XG firewall into his environment just to test it. And within a few hours, he was saying that there were some servers that were already compromised in the Azure environments that were communicating with command and control centers. That were calling them to command and control centers. So the type of visibility that the native security solutions in Azure was not able to bring out and show him with that simplicity. So we work with Microsoft to be able to provide this type of protection to you as you move your workloads to Azure. So you can see the traffic light indicators. You can identify systems that are at risk, endpoints that are at risk, and we use multiple methods to be able to do that. Objectionable websites that we're seeing, intrusion attacks that going through, and you have this visibility that you can actually configure as a report, and you can run regular reports to get this information sent out to you. So you see what's going on in my Azure environment. I'll show you very quickly a quick demo of that. So what I'll do is I'll go to my backend site, which is this one. I'm on dns.org. And what I will do also is I will show you one of the firewalls and the information that I'm talking about. So here's my XG firewall now, and I'm going to log into this. And you can see the dashboard. You can see what's going on. Is there any advanced threat protection, anything that's doing anything that's malicious within your environment? What I'll quickly do once I have this running is I'll quickly go to my backend server because I have the Sophos endpoint protection running on this. Yeah. I want to show you the policy of this. So that's why. Doing that. I want to show you this from a network level. So let's do that first of all. Okay, so we have this nice website called Sophos Test. So let's go to sophostest.com. So sophostest.com. So for example, if I go to look for an example of a site that's trying to communicate with a command and control server that's trying to call them to probably download malicious payload into your Azure environment. I go to that site. Yeah, everything's all good. It all went through successfully. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go quickly to my XG firewall here, and I'm going to go on the advanced threat here, and I'm going to enable our advanced threat protection. And I can specify that to log and drop or to log only. If I wanted to add any exceptions, I can add that. And I'm just going to click apply to that. And again, I'm going to be logging it. I'm going to be dropping it also. And you can begin to see how threats that are hidden within your Azure network can be easily, instantly exposed with this. So once that applied successfully, so still yet to apply. So we just wait for, yeah, so that's successfully applied now. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my backend system and let's go open the column site. Yeah, and there you go. So it stops security risks detected. So things that were going through your environment before, prior to having this level of protection, all of a sudden we're stopping that. But here's the amazing thing is if I go back to my firewall, if I go back to my dashboard, instantly that compromised system is exposed to me. I can see exactly what you can see. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's an advanced threat protection detection here. There's a server that's trying to call them. I can click on that and I can have a look and see, okay, this particular server within my network is trying to call them to a command and control center. I could investigate that more and see what in the world is going on with the systems. And that's what I mean when I talk about the level of visibility that we provide. You can see in terms of the dashboards and in terms of the application and web reports that you can get out of the box. This is not a separate license or a separate solution. This is built into the system. You can get visibility into what are the web risks that's going on in my environment. What are the endpoints that are at risk within my environment? What even using my data? You know, any dodgy thing that's going on there, any anomalies that's going on there. You can have visibility into the threats that's going on your network, any intrusion attacks that's being detected, anything that looks malicious that's going on within your network. All of this instantly will give you visibility into that. And if you wanted to, let's say you're running a situation like a VDI in Azure, you could actually build your own custom report. So for example, if there's a particular URL that you're really concerned about, you could go search and have a look. Is somebody been accessing this particular URL within my environment? You know, the past whatever month, give me a report and let me see what's going on. Okay, I can see somebody has been accessing dns.org. How many bytes has gone out to that? So you could get this level of visibility again out of the box on the Sophos XG solution. And I'll round up very, very quickly here so that we can move on. So that I can take some questions. So identify risky endpoint. Again, we'll point out this endpoint is doing some dangerous activity. Have a look at this endpoint. Identifying risky application. So we do that using something called synchronized security, which unfortunately due to time I won't be able to demo to you, but I'll talk about it. Using synchronized application control, we can identify risky download and just expose all of this information to you. So full on-box reporting with hundreds of reports, which is what I talked about. So I've showed you them on that. Let's conclude on the synchronized security in Azure. So when many security companies talk about this concept of multi-layered security, which is a great concept that everyone should be following. You should have multiple layers of threat defense within your organization. It's one of the tried and trusted security principles that still applies in an Azure environment. What we've done at Sophos, though, is taking that to a different level. We're talking about how about we get these isolated layers of threat protection talking to one another? How about they start coordinating defenses with one another? How about they start communicating with one another? This goes beyond event correlation. This is actually responding to threat automatically based on what's going on all the other layers. And that's what we've done at Sophos. So for example, if you have the Sophos Intercept X for server protecting your servers in Azure, you could enable this thing we call synchronized security, where if a detection happens on the endpoint, we can the firewall that you have in Azure in your security tier can respond to that, right? And take certain actions based on what it's seeing from the endpoint, the communication coming in from the endpoint. It could stop that server from being able to communicate with critical workloads because it's seen some malicious activity going on that particular server. And this is the things that we can do with synchronized security. But this is not just it. What we've actually done is taking that to another level, which I think it's amazing, with what we call the synchronized application control. Just to talk very briefly about that, the issue with application control as it was in the past before synchronized security is that it's mainly signature-based. And what that means is that there are certain applications that will not have signatures. Maybe you have a custom application that's built in-house that you're using in your organization. That application may not have a signature. You have certain applications that are intentionally trying to evade detections. So an attacker lands within a server on your environment. They install some kind of proxy or VPN agents that's been crafted to avoid detection by an application control system. So and then you have application signatures that change very often. Sometimes it's encryption everywhere, which is a good concept. But then how do you deal with that? What we actually do at Sophos, I'll skip some of this and just talk to that, is we have this thing called synchronized app control, where you have the Sophos Intercept X running on your servers in Azure, and you have the Sophos XG firewall as a security tier. The security tier on the network can actually go ask the endpoint, and you see what that looks like. Unknown application seen on the firewall. Okay, our endpoint, tell me what's communicating to me on this port or through this port on this, and it's actually going to get that process information. And the firewall can either automatically classify that, right, and apply controls based on that, or you as an admin can manually categorize the application and apply controls based on that. And to tell you what this means is that we've actually built containerization at the network level, where you as an admin can go, only this process within my Azure environment can communicate out through whatever that you want it to communicate to. So you can actually apply that down to the process level. The way I describe it is containerization on the network level. Unfortunately, there's no time to really delve deep and show you that. But what I do is on this particular server that I have here, I have the Sophos Intercept X for server installed, right? And once I have that installed and enabled here, if I go show you very quickly what I can do is when I have my firewall rules, it's the number one for my egress security rules. I can begin to configure to use the ELF of the machine in that. So that synchronized security, I can say only allow this to go through if it has a particular level of health, because again, the firewall is communicating with the endpoint. But also, if I go on the this, and I'll show you that very quickly. Actually, let me go to show you that from the dashboard. So you can see you can enable synchronized application controls. And what will happen is I can begin to detect applications that were initially hidden within my environment, right? That maybe there was no signature for them. And then what I can begin to do is I can begin to configure policies based on this, where I can go, this particular process alone can communicate outside in this particular way. So I think I'll probably round off and just give you the key takeaways and then take some questions. Round off talking about Sophos security solutions for the public cloud. I've talked about Sophos Central, Intercept X for server, Sophos XG firewall for the Azure platform. We have a solution called Avid Secure that can help when it comes to identifying misconfigurations or security posture management for your Azure environment, right? Show you when things are configured not according to Microsoft best practices. We can highlight that and bring that up to you very quickly. And here's a bunch of key takeaways for today. Number one, read and digest the Azure network security best practices. By doing this, if you follow these best practices, you're going to lower your risk of your Azure environment being compromised. Realize the depth of the Sophos security proposition. So, comprehensive security solution built as a single solution, right? So consolidate services to save costs. So Microsoft definitely loves this message, again, because Microsoft wants you to be successful. You want to consolidate multiple services to save cost on Azure. Microsoft wants you to do that. That's why they push out a lot of information on how you can save cost on Azure. Simplified architecture and reduce your costs. You need IPS IDS with WAF. We can provide that to you as a single solution. We can expose hidden or compromised hidden threats or compromised systems that are within your Azure environment with a comprehensive visibility and reporting. And a synchronized security solution is one of a kind in the industry. And finally, they have it secure for cloud security posture management, cloud workload protection, and DevSecOps. And I think I'll stop there and I'll just take any questions. Thank you very much.
Hey, David. This is Len speaking. Just so actually, I understand you don't have much time, but we should also you would cover the HTML5 feature which Sophos has, and that's what's really important when, let's say, customers looking for some kind of a jump box to get into the environment and, like, of course, secure environment, right?
Yeah.
And HTML5 is Sophos is unbelievable. It's really working great. That's one piece comment from my end. If you could highly brief us in what's the difference between UTM and XG?
Okay. So UTM is it's kind of like it's a other network security solution. So both of them have been developed side by side. So what happens is UTM came from a different acquisition made by Sophos, the network security company called Astaro, and then XG Firewall came from another security acquisition. We've put a lot of Sophos components into it, as you can see, but it came from another network security acquisition called Cyberroom. So that's like the main difference between the two. In terms of the functionalities that they provide very similar functionalities. Actually, it's getting the XG actually provide more comprehensive solutions. So, for example, synchronized security that I talked about, that's possible with the XG firewall, which we have in Azure. So you can have synchronized security in Azure. So that's kind of like a brief.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's good. It's, I guess, the reason why I'm asking, I don't know, for the new people who new to the Sophos, UTM, you can get the home license, 50 IPs, right? Can you do the same with XG, or it's XG specifically enterprise?
No, thanks for bringing it up. So that's very so. Our solution, the UTM and the XG firewall, it's free for home users. So I actually recommend go try it out yourself. Again, I'll put this out here. So in case anybody has any question, you want to, again, just to tell you around the thing around visibility that I talked about, right? Expose hidden threat. You have nothing to lose. We give you free trials. Just put the Sophos XG into your Azure environment and see if any threats are going to be exposed that you did not know about before, right? So if I go publiccloud@sophos.com is our email address. So publiccloud@sophos.com, and that comes to all of us, which are public cloud security architects, and we can provide support and guidance to you. Again, just go try out the XG firewall. I think it's going to expose certain threats that you're missing within your environment and give you certain information. But to your point, yes, the XG firewall is absolutely available for free for home users. So if you want to use this for at home to protect your family, it's free. And you can deploy it as a virtual machine or on the physical machine. That's fine also.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And also, just in case, I pasted in the chat window your blog, where you cover in more details for the GNS3. I've been your fan for the long time, so
no,
thank you so much for this.
For that. No problems at all. So yeah, thanks for bringing up the blog. It's good. Thank you. Any other questions? Yep. Any other questions? Okay. So if there are no other questions, Brian, I'm going to hand back over to you.
Thanks, David. That was awesome. Super comprehensive and very impressive. So thank you so much for taking the time and energy to put this together and to give us this fantastic end-to-end tour of the platform. It was very informative.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I think we're just about to the top of the hour, so I will give folks just a few minutes back. Thanks again to the Sophos team and for everyone coming today to learn on this product. Next week, we will be doing Arista, and then after that, I will probably schedule some more topics that are focused on Azure, something that I'll cook up. So thanks all. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.